My platform is about storytelling, and it's about empowering underrepresented Canadians to tell their own stories. But also, it's about providing training program for people who don't know how to do public speaking. Like where I'm from, especially as an African, people believe that if you are not a lawyer, an engineer, a doctor, no other career matters. So how can we shift that narrative so that people who want to be creative can have the space to be creative and enjoy the process?
Hey, folks, welcome back to the Coachful Coaching Leadership Podcast. And today I'm here with Fatu M. Kaba. Did I say that right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm starting this off right. I do want you to give an introduction of yourself, but you said you have a problem with boasting. So I'm going to say exactly what I see on your LinkedIn profile here. It says award-winning peace activist, entrepreneur, actor, storyteller, and author. And as I understand, soon to be TED Talk speaker at some point, right? Thumbs up there.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's the foundation of your introduction. So you're going to
I
have to
mean,
do
I
better
think
than
that
that.
basically covers everything.
No, you're going to have to do way better than that right now. So Fatu, I'm going to hand it over to you. Introduce yourself, please.
Okay. My name is Fatu, and I was born and raised in Monrovia, Liberia during the 14-year Civil War. And afterwards got a scholarship to study in the US. And I think being born during the Civil War impacted my outlook on life. So when I got a scholarship to study in the US, I studied peace studies and conflict resolution. And I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, so I did entrepreneur alongside of that. And afterwards, I moved to Canada because the US system is not really suitable for international students who wanted to be entrepreneurs. Like during COVID, I wrote my first novel, but I could only publish it on a free site since you are not allowed to monetize work. And I, looking back 4 years now, I have almost 500,000 read, and I'm just like, oh my God. I wish even if those being sold, if it's half was gonna be better. But
Yeah.
still, so I'm currently doing my master's here in Canada, Master of Technology Entrepreneurship and Innovation, and also launching my own business called Hearts. And it's about storytelling. I have always loved storytelling. Growing up, I grew up with my grandma for the most part, and we had this thing where every night we just sit around and just tell stories.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the highlights of my childhood. That's why even my logo is about the Cora that's meant for storytelling from our people. So my platform is about storytelling, and it's about empowering underrepresented Canadians to tell their own stories in the way that they feel most comfortable and that they want their stories to be told. Because uh, being in the US and in Canada, I notice most of the time people tell our stories and not in the best ways that we want them to be told. And sometimes I watch a movie that has origin in indigenous culture, and I've talked to indigenous folks, and they're like, that is not our story. That is something else, and it's not us. So the platform basically is about empowering people to tell the stories, but also it's about providing training program for people who don't know how to do public speaking, don't know how to tell the stories, what are the elements of storytelling, being a writer, and also as a creative, sometimes it's hard to monetize your work or go to the business side of things because where I'm from, especially as an African, people believe that if you are not a lawyer, an engineer, a doctor, no other career matters. So how can we shift that narrative so that people who want to be creative can have the space to be creative and enjoy the process?
Yeah. If I do,
So yeah,
if I
I
can
think
introduce,
that's gonna cover it.
yeah. If I can interrupt you there, how you saying in Africa, whether you're a doctor or lawyer, that's the only careers. Unfortunately, that's everywhere else too.
I heard that a lot.
Every other culture and
Yeah,
across the world, there's only five careers in the world, which is
it's
absolutely
fine.
false. Yep, that's it. That's it, right? So either you're sick, or you're in, you're in trouble with the law, right? Or you need an accountant, right? Um, in all seriousness, though, like I'm looking at your LinkedIn profile, and you mentioned like you wrote a book in 2020 during the
The
lockdown,
COVID.
and yeah, and I think a lot of people had great aspirations about what they wanted to accomplish, and to see that you wrote this book called Fiona,
Yeah,
a
Fiona
romance.
Salam. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, on your LinkedIn profile it says 331,542 views.
That was, I think, about 2 or 3 years ago when I posted that on LinkedIn.
Okay,
But it's
where are
actually
you at
grown
now?
a lot. Around 400,000 minus 490 some thousand, almost 500,000, a little bit
Yeah,
over that. So it's in between that range.
yeah. Okay. Well, we'll link to that after. I'm very interested in what that book is about, and what's captured people's attention. But I do want to loop back to like how we got connected. We got connected through a common friend, Kalyani Pardeshi, who was on this podcast earlier last year, and she mentioned that like, and I'm hearing like this platform you're building, and what was it called again? This
Hearts.
platform for hearts. Yeah, and we'll link. If you can send me the link to that, I'll link that in the show notes as well. Um, it sounds like a lot of that, the motivation for doing this is you mentioned right at the beginning is you grew up in civil war, right? In Liberia. Um, what was that like? And you know, and I want to ask that because you've talked to me about building connection in a conflict zone. Uh, Talk to me more about that. It's very fascinating.
Yeah, that's what my TED is gonna be about. So I don't want to go too deep into that,
Okay,
but
okay. You go as deep
I can
as
just
you
like
you,
skim
you think
over
so.
it.
Yeah.
So it's basically the idea that, just to put it like in simple terms, when you are online sometimes and you see something and you get triggered by it, because what other people experience, and if you also experience trauma, you most likely relate to the experience of the next person. So in some way, our traumas are all connected, and it just take the next person to re-trigger yours. And how can we not only identify that we have trauma, because sometimes people don't know, or maybe they do, but they don't feel too comfortable telling people that, oh, I need help.
Mm,
So how can we identify not only our trauma, but also help other people? And when we do that, how can we use the connections and the power of that trauma to advocate for non-violent social change, basically global peace? Because if you're talking about trauma through violence, you also have to talk about the root cause of that trauma. So it's
mm.
basically interlinked. So my talk is basically around that. How can we identify those connections and then use those connections to advocate for global peace and also heal ourselves in the process?
Yeah. Okay. So advocating for global peace, healing yourself in the process. So I'm curious, like you're starting this movement, if you want to call it a movement, the hearts,
I can take
right?
that.
Yeah, yeah. And it, how is this related to the healing and the helping of others that you just talked about?
So I feel like if I have to like dive into that, I'll be diving a lot into my talk, and I don't want to do that.
Okay. We can cut this part out, by the way.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
let's do
okay. This is exactly what I was talking about. We can cut that part out.
that.
Okay. We'll cut that part out then. Let's talk a bit more about you then, right? Um, and I guess what would you want to talk about yourself? Like what do you want people to know about Fatu? Right?
Mm.
You're doing this TED Talk, which we're going to keep under wraps for now because we don't want to, reveal. There's a big reveal for that soon, and you have this platform called Hearts that's coming along. Help everyone understand who Fatu is, right? And you know who's this person, Fatu, who's who's doing all of this.
Uh, I think, excuse me.
It's okay.
I think Fatu is an ordinary girl. I like to identify myself as an ordinary person because, sorry,
It's okay.
I like to identify myself as an ordinary person who just like have seen the world a little differently. And most of the time, I see I'm from a community where not a lot of girls do the things I do, but I also don't want to feel like I'm not proud of them. But anyways, what people can know about Fatu? I I don't even know how to answer that question, but I'll say I'm someone who really passionate about empowering not just myself but also empowering others. And so most of my work basically focus on not just storytelling, but also elements of storytelling that have to do with community growth and community impact because I feel it takes a village. So I'm an activist and I think I've always just loved activism, maybe because of my background also being born and raised in a civil war. So yeah, I think it's hard to answer like I don't know how
Yeah,
to like go on the whole bragging stuff about Patrick.
it's okay.
But yeah.
I'll help you brag a bit, right? I'll help you brag. So you did mention you're an activist. What are you most passionate about as an activist?
Women empowerment.
Yeah,
Uh
talk more about that.
okay. 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 Uh I was born in a very traditional African family and my father had three wives, and my mom was the
Mm.
last one. She got married at the age of 13.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yes. And after he died, there was this tradition that the women have to remarry his brother, who was basically take over the family, the property, the children, and everything. But her marriage experience wasn't the best with my dad and the family in general. So she was like, I don't want to do that. So she left, and that kind of caused like a rift between us and our dad's side of the family. And there's like a lot of financial struggle for Oma who got married at the age of 13, no formal education or anything. So it kind of became a huge deal, not to mention
Mm.
surviving the Civil War, everything that caused it. So after we, after like she refused to get married, moved to a new environment. It was an environment where we have diverse people. Some we knew a little bit more educated. Some people had trades, but it was very diverse. There were different religions. There were different cultures. Liberia is a very diverse country. So through that, she came to a conclusion that the only thing she wants is to ensure that her girls are also educated so that
Hmm.
they have the power to make those choices. And of course, that decision was very tough considering that she didn't have a lot of money. So we
Hmm.
always had to like compete for scholarships and get to. It was a little different for us compared to other people. I didn't even know I was going to go to college until I got a scholarship to go to college, and especially in the US. But currently, I have more than a dozen older sisters, and I'm the first person to attend college, graduate college. And now my little sister is also about to graduate college, and I'm
Oh wow.
also having, yeah, with two girls from our mom and dad. So for me, education has played like a major part in my life. So I just want to make sure that other women, other women after me, also have the chance to be in the spaces that they deserve to be in, regardless of their religion and tribe. And I also seen a lot of time where people kind of push us down because of religion, even though it's not religious, but they make like, a lot of excuses. So for me, it's empowering women. It's not that I don't want to um, empower boys because recently I did a Facebook post that I want to create safe spaces so that when a girl next door walk in, she feels safe. And I had a few guys reaching my center, but like, and they're like, but we've also reached out to you and we feel safe. So why are you only talking about girls?
Hmm.
So yeah, my space is usually open. I I'm usually my social medias. I utilize them to just like talk to people. Sometimes you see a scholarship or I see a scholarship and I'm like, hey, I think you'd be good for the scholarship. Let me help you apply. I do that for both boys and girls, but personally, I wish a lot of girls would reach out to me because they face like
Hmm.
the most like marginalization, especially now But so yeah, that's what I'm really passionate about. And even my platforms, I also I wanna prioritize everybody, but I also want to prioritize people who have not been represented. And that's not just girls, but that could be anybody who's like been in the community where they have not been seen or heard.
Mm, yeah. It, it, it's amazing, like, that, that story you tell is how much our parents and our families have influence on us, right? And when you're talking about this, I see you light up when you're talking about how your mom basically bucked the trend, if you want to put it lightly, right? She went against the grain there, right? But how that has impacted you and the mission that you're on right now. So, so you mentioned that, like, right now you want to empower other women as well, but something caught my ear. You said that you wish more women would reach out to you. I
Yes.
guess, have you thought about that? Like, how do you get more women to reach out to you?
So I usually sometimes like organize like mini events where we just like talk, or I use like my social media to like start conversations. I over the years it just like got into a point where people would always like DM me with like Risha, hey Fatu, can I talk to you? Or I have XYZ going on. It's not just about academic stuff, but sometimes
Yeah.
I'm not married, but I still get like people talking to me about their marriages. But just like a safe space where people feel like they can talk to someone and not feel judged. But also knowing that, oh, there is this other sister who she's applied for scholarships on her own. She's doing her master's degree. She's an entrepreneur, and I want to be like her. I think for me, one of my major highlights was when I was a talk show host a few years ago. I was basically hosting this particular show that day. A guy called me and he was like, "Thank you so much. I initially did not think a girl would be as eloquent as you and being on the media. I really look forward to your shows and I want to make sure my girls are also going to school. And I'm going to make sure that I tell them to follow in your footsteps." And I was like, what? I didn't think this was a big deal, but thank you. So for me, that was one of like the major highlights of my career. It's knowing that a very traditional father who say,
Mm,
"I want my girl to be like that." So
mm.
imagine what like people who are not traditional when it comes to like women empowerment. So yeah, I think it's basically just around that. It's just making sure that sometimes I just like start a conversation. Hey, let's talk about this. Or what idea do you have? You just feel free to reach out to me.
Oh, well, well, that's a wonderful thing you're doing for the community there. Something else that caught my eye is, and I wonder how this is all related to the activism that you're involved in. You say you're an actor. What's that mean? Like, are you?
So
I thought you're a movie star. Like, are you a movie star? You're in some
that's basically
Hollywood movie.
what that means. And yeah, I recently also like got into modeling, yeah, acting, but I'm not too. I want to say I'm not too like passionate about the acting side of it, but more like the modeling side of it, and that's also about representation. Because so when I was also back in Liberia, I was part of like a agency for modeling and things,
Mm,
but I had to drop out because I got a lot of advice about how the system was corrupt. And so most girls who want to like pursue that side of career believe that you're either gonna have to say about it, or you're gonna have to drop out, you're gonna have to like pay some kind of money that you don't want to have to go through. So for me, still pursuing that path is also telling people that you can still be a model, you can be an actor, you can do what you want to do without having to pay prices you don't feel comfortable with. So just also about being that person who would be like, oh, but she's doing it, why can I do it? So yeah.
okay, okay. That's a fascinating part of your your history so far, right? And I guess, like, how's that? And you're talking about being a storyteller, and how you grew up with your grandma telling stories, and for myself too. Like, that's some of the best things that I realize now when I'm older, why my parents told me so many stories of back home, how it was. Like, they immigrated to Canada 50 something years ago, and they tell all the great stories, and this is what we did,
They
and
have
now
good
I
stories to tell.
understand. Yeah, I understand the significance now. Like as a parent, hey, my kids want to understand where, where their grandparents came from and where their family came from. So I guess like when you think about storytelling now, right? What are you're starting this thing called Hearts. What are some of the stories that got you very interested? Like, what stories do you want to be able to tell everyone out there?
So, um, as part of Hearts, the major component of storytelling is a podcast. I think I told you I'm also, hopefully I'm launching it by the 15th of April.
Mm-hmm.
And let me just say, one of the topics this would basically have to do with, one of my guests is going to be speaking on the topic of Black models and Black representation in the media, what it brings to be a Black entrepreneur and a model, because she's an entrepreneur, but mostly in the modeling sector. So those are kind of stories. And I also have another guest who's going to be talking about what it means to be an Asian male, or I think South Asian male in the media, and what that feels like the challenge is, because we always talk about the things women deal with, but sometimes we leave our guys out. So yeah, those are like stories that people tell, and also from the indigenous community, what you guys do, how it does it feel like being the representation of the community in the media, what the media say about you versus what you want to get to know about you. So yeah, the stories are basically about that. But also stories about how do you write a book, because I love writing a book. So how do you write a book, and how do you get started? How do you monetize your book? What are some platforms to be a self-published author and maybe a traditionally published author, because I want to do both route too. So just yeah, stories around that.
Yeah, there's a big theme about stories in your life so far, right? Your own
Yes,
story,
I
the
love
stories.
story. I could listen
Yeah.
to people's stories all the time. Just like, tell me about it. I want to hear it.
And so when you look at the story, the romance story that you wrote, Fiona, that has over 400,000 views to this point, right? Um, what was that about? What
Ooh,
motivated you to write that story?
okay, I was bored. That's it.
Good,
That like the
good.
first. I was bored.
Some people made bread. Some people learned a language. You wrote a book.
Yeah, when I'm bored, I think when I'm bored, there are two things I usually run to. I run to either reading a book or writing a book. So I was bored during the COVID, and I just like, what do I do? And I had this inspiration. I started writing like a few chapters, and just like I just wanted to keep my audience entertained. And then surprisingly, kind of blew up. So I just like posted it on this website, and for a while, I was actually gonna drop it, and then the audience kind of like really came at me. They're like, no, you have to continue. And then so I just like wrote it. But now I'm like editing it and rewriting it. But Fiona, basically, I think one of the things that was in mind when I was writing it was the fact that most of the time, which I'm still hoping to write a better story on, when we talk about, or at least when I was growing up, most of the stories or like the movies I saw, it was always the helpless girl who was in need, and it have to
Hmm.
be like the prince charming that comes to the rescue. But what if
Hmm.
they both are on equal footing, and nobody have to like put the other person down, but they can still have like a very mutually respectful relationship. They have like misunderstanding and other things, but it's not like she doesn't have power to stand up on her own, which they usually make it like, well, because she's helpless, now she suddenly miraculously love this person because it took her out of like whatever situation she's in. But rather she's helpless but in a very different situation. So she just an overview of Fiona, she started her own company from a very young age. She became a multi-millionaire for that, and eventually traveled out to study. And by the time she came back, there's a lot of family conspiracy that she almost lost her life. So now she met our our protagonist, our male protagonist side things. And so
Hmm.
two of them got together, and he also had a lot of conspiracies in his families, and both had to like join forces to like fight against those outside conspiracies.
I
And
see.
about him sticking up for like the trash.
It, and this is fiction, I
Yes.
presume. Okay, yeah. I mean, it sounds like real life too, by the way. So,
I think I try to write creative nonfiction, creative fictions that have to do with both life things that I saw. Like one of the books I'm yet to publish. It's called Harder Choices, and it's about the life of girls specifically from my tribe and
mm,
the choices we have to make out of education and marriage, where the family get to decide what's your career, what's your marriage, and you're not allowed to marry someone who's not from their tribe. They basically want about to marry because that's how close it
yeah.
gets. So it's the choices people make, but also making sure it's like not a nonfiction before people feel like I'm part of it because that people feel connected to it.
So you've told a lot of stories. You've written a lot of stories. You've read a lot of stories. You're still telling stories. Then there's more to come. I guess if we were to sit here a year or two from now with each other, what's a story that you want everyone to know about?
It definitely will be harder choices.
We had our choices,
It's called harder choices, like
harder choices,
difficult choices.
difficult choices.
Yes,
Okay.
because it was this what I was basically talking about. It's about fictional character, and again, who have to
Yeah.
go through all these family trauma, marriage dilemma. Yeah, and it gets really dark, but
Mm.
it gets dark because most of the things in that book is about the things that saw growing up. It's true, realize a fictional person, but I've seen Bellas in my life.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think for me, I think I'm on my seventh project right now, but it's still the book that has stood the most to me. And I've also like had few people who are from within that circle read it, and they just like I even had someone what I feel so connected to this book. It's actually was meant to be a tragic ending. And then the few people that read it really came to fight me and they were like, no, we are not doing that. We need a happy ending. So hopefully it's gonna have a book too. But yeah, that's the work I want people to read, people to be aware of
Mm.
the challenges of being a black, I don't want to say black, but like an African woman from a
Mm.
very conservative African family.
Yeah. So when you think about then what you've learned up to now in your life, right? Um, and all the activism you're doing and what you're trying to do moving forward. If you had to go back to the younger version of Fatu and give her advice, what would that advice be?
If I were to go back, I think I'll tell her thank you. I know we all have like a vast we give to our past selves, but she made a lot of mistakes. She's not perfect and she's still not perfect. But the choices she's made is what brought me to where I am today. The the choices to compete, to stand up for voices. I remember once I had a debate, and this was also a local debate, and it was about boys versus girls education in Islam. And did a lot of research and realized that religious scripture has even more quotations on girls' education than it does for boys. But a lot of elderly men came at me for being a bad influence on women.
Mm.
So the fact that she stood up to those things and said it in public, like, hey, I'm a girl and you actually manipulating religion and it's not like this and stand up for what
Mm.
believe, I would say thank you.
Mm. Thank you.
I wouldn't change the choices she's making because the lessons, the mistakes, the good, the bad have all been part of who I am today. It's our experience that make us.
Yeah. So you've displayed a lot of courage in your life, and it sounds like you've had some good role models growing up as well. So if you were to give advice to just one person who's listening to this right now about there's something out there that they want to do, they want to say, they want to express, but they're just a little bit scared. What advice would you give them?
I think I would tell them to reach out. I would tell them to do what they want to do, but to also reach out to people who will be able to help them. People usually are willing to help them. I'll give an example of that too. So when I first came to Canada, I watched A Lost Girl when I was still back home. It's a Canadian supernatural movie, and I really liked it. And I came here and I just like went online, like, if I want to write screenplays, what do I do? I don't know the industry and anything. So I don't know how I did it, but I just like did a lot of research, got in contact with one of the cast, and I just like sent an email and reached out on Instagram, like, hey, I have this idea that I'm working on. It's supernatural and I want to have it into a screenplay, but I don't know what to do. And he replied and said, let's have a meeting. And during this meeting, he said one thing. He said, it was very bold of you to randomly reach out, but I'm glad you reached out.
Yep.
So I would say reach out to people. Not everybody's going to come back to you. And I know we hear this a lot, but the few people that are going to get back to you, it's going to be worthwhile. So if you want to do something, reach out.
Yeah. That's been a recurring theme on this podcast too, where people I speak to is, first of all, if you don't reach out, you definitely won't get an answer. The worst thing that can happen when you reach out to someone is that they don't answer. And by the way, there's nothing bad about that. You don't hear anything. That's fine. But the upside, the best thing is that I'll take a few minutes to answer this question that this person has, and the amazing things that happen. Like I had this.
That's how I also met Kalyani. Basically just like when I was looking at when I was doing my submission for TED, I think I would need advice from people who've actually done that, because I have watched a lot of TED Talks and TED wasn't part of the things I really dreamed of. So let me just give a little background about how my TED came to be, okay?
Sure.
I love to write. And during this, when all this like social media was blowing up with Congo, Palestine, Sudan, and everything, I had an inspiration. I've actually written a few blogs on Palestine, Civil War, and everything. But that's when I basically wrote this idea of connective trauma and how I feel connected to the trauma of these people. So I initially submitted to one of the local Canadian like blogs. I'm like, hey, I have an idea, and I've actually wrote it down here, and I want to like publish it. And I heard, and they rejected it. So rejection, rejection, right? They rejected it, and later I learned that's because they've banned the use of Palestine on your platform. And I like had like Palestine for everything in my platform, in my work. So I absolutely rejected it. I think how the algorithm sometimes like just give you random things. And I saw like this person advertising, hey, they want to be a TEDx speaker. And I just like laughed at like, TEDx, that's too big. But I went ahead and signed up anyway. And then he was charging up to 1,005 just to help you apply. And I was like, that's too much. So I started like doing research here and there, sign up for like a few more like webinars and things on TED, and they were all just like really crazy expensive. Like, you know what? I can afford that. So I did research on my own and started submitting an application. That's when I reached out to people who like giving TED to just like get advice. Hey, what did you do differently? What can I do? Like again, reaching out, right? That's how I texted Kalyani on LinkedIn. I basically just like when I saw she was giving a speech here in Canada, like, oh, okay, good. And I just like find her on LinkedIn. I send like you know how LinkedIn allow you to like send short message with your request. I like, hey, I'm applying for a TED, and this is my idea. Will you be waiting to just help me with here and there direction? And she like go back to me. Again, if you don't reach out, people don't get back to you. And I submitted my idea for a TED. And I honestly didn't know I was gonna get accepted. It's not I didn't trust like that I did a good work. it's I feel like TED usually very competitive, and it wasn't one of I was intentional like trying to give a TED talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
It just
But you
became
have some,
yeah
yeah, but you have something interesting to share, right?
yeah
So ideas worth spreading is what they say, right?
yeah, and I just went for it.
Well,
But I'm glad also
congratulations.
the news did not accept it because then I'm not going to submit it for TED. But since they rejected it, I just like send it somewhere else.
So when is this TED Talk happening?
It's June 8th in Ontario.
Oh, okay. Well, oh,
Yeah.
whereabouts? We're in Ontario.
Yeah. Oh,
Oh,
Oshawa?
Oshawa. Okay.
Oshawa. Okay,
Yeah.
Oshawa.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
live in the Toronto area, so
Yeah. I
that's a
heard.
little bit east of me. So,
Yeah.
okay. Well, enjoy that. That should be a wonderful experience for you. Yeah.
I'm looking
Well,
forward to it.
Fatu, it's been 36 minutes now. Here's one thing I always do with all my guests. I always leave the last question to my guest to ask me anything
Nice.
you want to ask. So I've been asking you questions. You can ask me a question now.
Okay. I feel like I was thinking about it for a while, but I was just like not too sure. So, based on like your experience with podcasts and everything, right? What's one of the best advice you've gotten out of as a podcaster or maybe from your guests? But what's been like your high?
There's been a lot of highlights on the spot. I guess that one of the big highlights for myself is that people are willing to help if you ask. So that just the last guest, which I'll be publishing very very soon. Her name is Bimpe, and she started a company during uh, during COVID. Just like you did something during COVID. She started a company, and 4 years later, she's on the New York City Times Square, right? And her product is being featured there. So she just posted that on social media recently. And what she said resonated with me was that if you just ask people for help, the community will help you. There are so many people who just help you for free. They don't want anything back. It's just paying it forward. What I'm doing for you, you do for me. And so that's
Grateful.
one thing that's stuck out. Um, I think the other thing is similar to that is a recurring theme is paying things forward to others, right? Paying it forward in a kind way. So it's help the next person, help the next person. And there's just something good that you create in a community when you're just helping others, right? You're not asking for anything in return. It's just let me provide you some sort of value so that you can pass it on to the next person. It creates a nice virtuous cycle of goodness. And there's something good about that. I don't know what it is, but that's something I've also picked up. I guess the last thing is, and this is like from all my guesses, don't be so hard on yourself. It's
Oh,
it's too easy. Yeah, yeah. Like we're in our heads a lot. Kalyani's talk was about
oh
self-bullying,
yeah, I love.
and her story is extremely powerful. But and every single person here, from TED speakers to people who are executives to people who are doctors who've been on this podcast, everyone has this self-doubt, but that self-doubt talking right here, saying you're not worthy, you're a piece of whatever, you're not good. It's common amongst everyone to know that it's a shared experience, but don't ignore it. But you can't give it that power over you, right? And
True.
that's another thing I've learned. So that's just three things that stick out. There's a lot of other things I've learned from
Well,
people.
that's not very powerful.
Yeah, it's very powerful. But even the most successful person on the surface, they struggle. There's some people who really struggle very deeply too. And speaking of like the mental health side of things, I think it's good nowadays that even kids in school are learning about it. It's a real thing, right? If you're healthy up here, you're healthy physically as well. You're going to be able to do more for people around you and the community around you. So those are some of the things that stick out for me about what I've learned.
Mm.
Yeah,
Have you watched the book, the movie Pay It Forward?
I remember that title. I don't,
You
wait,
still
hold on.
watch it? I loved it.
Hold on. I think yes, I know it sounds familiar. I'm going to have to look it up after this now.
Yeah, you should. It's really an interesting dynamic of paying it forward. How one life starts to like become change everybody else.
Yeah, yeah. And but that's the interesting journey here that I've had is that, up to today I met you. And if I trace back to a year ago, all the people I had to meet in order to meet you
Hmm.
today, it's it's individuals I would probably have never met unless I took this journey of doing a podcast.
Get started. Just do it.
Just do it.
Just do
And,
it.
and you just do it and be consistent, right? Be consistent. So, well, Fatu, thank you very much for your time today. I appreciate
Thank
you.
you for having me. I'm so looking forward to the release.
I'm so looking forward to the release of your TED Talk eventually.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah, a little mysterious what this TED Talk is. So,
Thank you so much,
well,
David.
all right, I'm going to stop the recording.
Okay.